Yeah, so I think we just go ahead and just start with we're picking it up from like where we we're at last week, right? So let's go ahead and just recap the situation a little bit with me. Help me remember too some of the details that's coming in from week over. So I was wondering, maybe Sean, you're in the best position to be able to help recap for us and like what we had going on here between this week and last week and how you understood what you were working on.
Yeah, so basically what I was talking and what I wrote on here was that, a lot of times the fear is kind of what's held us back, the unknown. And what we're learning more and more and more by being in this group is you kind of have to block that out. And I think it's kind of been a roadblock for us. And we're starting to realize that it's more of a mental thing than it actually is substantially keeping us from doing what we need to be doing. So I think that was kind of where I was coming from that. I know Nikki actually wasn't with us last week, so she kind of missed out. So I'm sure she probably has some input on that too. But, our thing is, this whole investment deal, jumping on these deals and accepting the fact that you're not going to get every one of them. I think the defeat is, we've got that fear factor in front of us of just, well, we're going to try it, but we're probably not going to get it. And we've got to learn how to look at it like, hey, if that one doesn't work, the next one will, and eventually it will happen. So I think that's what I was kind of just trying to say with that last week.
All right. I picked up a few different things out of what you were saying here, Sean. One thing I'd love to hear more about from you is this concept of like you're saying that you're afraid, you feel like there's things that are holding you back from being able to get done what it is you had planned to get done. So I assume what's happening is that you're setting like your weekly or your daily goals, either your top 3 to-dos for that day or your weekly. And tell me if I'm wrong so far, or tell me if I'm wrong as I go through here. But when you let those goals go, you got to the end of like what at the end of that time period. So the time period expired, and then you looked back and reflected and say, hey, did I get done the stuff that I thought I was supposed to get done, that I said I was going to do, either on my top 3 to-dos for that day or on that week? And when you looked at those, you said, no, I didn't get it done. But when I look at them, none of them actually look like they're not achievable. Like I should have been able to get those done. And then, and tell me if I'm wrong there, but is that what happened, or something substantially similar to that? Is that what happened that led you to believe that, hey, this is actually mental blocks?
Well, that does happen. But what I was focusing more on is our jumping into buying investment property. So I think that's kind of where we've just been kind of tippy-toeing with it, and we're not going full throttle and accepting, like you were talking about, success through failure. We're not going to get every deal.
Mm-hmm. So there's also part of it too, is like recalibrating your expectations for what success looks like. Yeah, because like before, success was actually getting a deal done, right? So what is success actually? How do you define what success looks like now?
Well,
I'm glad you were
we
jumping in.
really have a definition right now, because we had like this goal, we're going to get 2 houses every year, and last year was a disaster. This year isn't going much better.
I'd offer it to you that there's a way to get to success that will allow to what success actually looks like for you. Because if you don't have success defined, how are you ever going to feel successful? How are you ever going to go from feeling like I should be doing more? Right? So I'd recommend for you to start looking at your success as defined inside of here with what we see on page 3 of our planner. Making our success metrics SMART goals. That like I would know that I'm successful in my real estate investing, not because I got so many deals, right? As you said before, like that's gonna probably be that probably sets me up for failure, because like, man, if I didn't get that deal, that's not great. Maybe it could be like, what would be specific is like numbers of offers made or number of deals reviewed. Because then your success, what you feel good about and I feel accomplished about, is activities I can control. instead of factors that I can't control, like did my deal actually work or did it not work? Yeah. And then the fear that's connected to these is, well, the fear here can be really high because it's things I can't control and may or may not happen. Whereas if all I'm doing is committing to this is what are the number of offers that I made or what are the number of deals that I reviewed, then this is super achievable. Less fear is on there. So you're going to look at this is on page 3 where we talk about SMART goals. And what we typically will talk about SMART goals in relation to the things that we're doing here. So what's happening here is like Sean is looking at here from either the top goals for the week or his top 3 to-dos for the day, right? And say, well, I actually don't know whether what I'm doing right now is successful or if I'm really actually being successful or not. We're saying, well, to know whether you're being successful or to feel successful, you actually need to define what success is in a way that's specific and measurable. Otherwise, success is always going to be on the other side of something else. We'll never actually feel successful because the moment that thing works out, I would offer to you guys how many times this happened for us that we set a goal, we get to that goal, and now it's like, hey, I hit my goal, I got the 1 deal, but now I'm not going to feel successful and good until I have 3 deals. But the goalpost will just keep moving. And that if I don't get to the indicator that I want, like the deal made, right, then I'm going to say, well, I actually wasn't successful. But yeah, but you were doing all of the right activities and you can't control the result. All you can control is the activities. Like we can control the journey and how we show up every day in life, although I can't control life, right? That's like the overarching meta concept, right? We can only control the things we can control. We do really well at doing those. We define success around the stuff we can control doing. We release the outcome, saying we actually can't control the outcome of what's really going to happen. We can only control the things that we're doing. And if those things are specific and measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound, cool. Now we have SMART goals. Now it's clear for us to know whether we're doing them or not. If you find yourself there saying, I'm still not doing the activities I need to be doing, then it says, cool, now I know I have a mental block. I have some type of fear, some type of belief system, something else that's working against me inside of myself. And now I need to go dive deeper into like what's happening that I have really clear, actionable things that I know I could be doing that are going to drive me towards success, but I'm not doing them. And that's why the specific, measurable, and actionable things are so important. Because once you can get that clear on what it is you need to be doing, guess what? The fear goes away. Because fear is always in a realm of what's not understandable, right? It's always something I'm not clear on of what I need to do. So if you'll notice in your life too, like who's felt here that you were afraid of something, but the moment you had a plan, you felt okay. When I had a plan for whatever the thing was I was afraid of addressing it, now I felt fine. Right. Because the plan is the specific, measurable, and relevant and time-bound steps you're going to take. And so once you know those steps, you can drive towards those steps, the fear goes away. That's why planning will help you feel better as well. Cool. Thank you, Sean, for sharing with us that today and letting us talk through some of those concepts.
Yeah.
Was that helpful for you, Sean? Was there anything valuable that you took out of that?
Yeah. I think we were both in agreement here and everything you're saying. We're both kind of like, I can kind of nudge her and know that everything you're saying, we're both.
Yeah, I mean, I'm huge on SMART goals. We do that at work all the time, and I thought the deal was the goal, but the way you're phrasing it makes it more easier to wrap my head around.
Yeah, easier to be successful, right? Why not make success really easy for us to feel good about ourselves and what we're doing? The best way to do that is actually making stuff we can control, because then we're feeling great. Man, I'm kicking ass. I'm hitting all my goals. I'm doing all the things I need to be doing. Let's make it easy to feel good about what we're doing. Keep it inside of our control, making sure that we know exactly whether we're doing it or not. I'm dialing it in. Cool. All right. Anybody else have any reflections on the work that Sean has offered for us in our discussion here today so far before we turn into the next section? Yeah, go ahead, Julie.
I actually have a thought. I think we should also identify what kind of fear it is. For example, if you have the fear of missing out, is that a fear or is that a greed? Because when the market is super high, everybody is talking about investing, you might want to think about, is it the greed that's actually driving you? to be too brave, because when it comes to investing, we all should maybe consider the potential risk. So when the market, like stock market is in all-time high, do you want to overcome your fear and jumping buy at the high price, or do you want to keep a cool head thinking maybe it's a fear of missing out that's driving me, and then you lay out other indicators so that you can look at the facts instead of just thinking about your emotions. So that's my thought.
All right, what everybody hear from Julie's share? What did we pick up that was valuable out of that for everybody? I got a couple of things. All right, I'll share a couple of things that I grabbed out of that, guys, as like another way of we can talk about the same kind of concept through a different lens. And I think Julie's offered us a different lens here to look at this. So I'll go ahead and switch to my document camera. So here we have a buy or a sell of a deal. This is our action, right? That we're looking to take. And I think this is Julie's getting at, saying like, well, why do you want to either buy or sell this particular deal, right? And so maybe there's some other pieces that are kind of going to come before we get to this action step. And the pieces that usually come before is, it's always going to be a feeling and a thought, right? So the thought will be the first thing that comes into our head. Now this thing into our head, now we feel a certain way about it. Because I feel a certain way about it, then I'm going to take some kind of action. I'm either going to take or not take some kind of action. So here, the feeling could be, the thought could be, what could be running in your head? I better like make as much as I can. Right? This could be one of the thoughts in like Julie's scenario, right? I have a thought here that I better make as much money as I possibly can in this kind of market, right? Then what are the different ways you could feel about that thought, right? One of these could be a fear. The feeling itself could be a fear, because it could be like a fear of lack. If I don't make as much as I can, what will happen? Well, my family will starve to death in the street. Therefore, I'm full of fear and I better go ahead and take a bunch of actions, right? This could be a place that's not from fear, right? This could be a place that just is something that's like present and clear, which would be like, hey, well, better make as much money as I can because I really see all of the opportunity that's here. And I am present and clear about what that is. So what this means, present and clear means, is you're in like a neutral emotional state. The theory is that I can have whatever the thought is just the thought. However I feel about it is what's really true for me, and tells me the information of what's going on inside of myself. And then whatever the actions are going to be dependent upon what the thoughts are. So when I make investments or I make decisions in life, I can have whatever thought I have about it. But my next piece here is when I get to the feeling level, this is when I need awareness. I need to stop whatever else I'm doing and check in with myself as how am I actually feeling about this thought? If I have this thought and I'm feeling afraid, like the world is going to fall apart, that gives you good awareness that you're actually living in fear. You're living in some type of a future bad event or a past bad event. It's something that's not present, because unless there's a tiger that's about to jump out of the bushes and attack you, there's nothing actually to be afraid of in the present, right now. That if you have fearful thinking, what that's telling you is that you're afraid of a future event that's not yet occurred, or you're reliving out a past event that happened to you before. That you're afraid that whatever's going on with this is going to re-trigger something that either happened to you before, or it's something new that's going to happen in the future that's going to be terrible, right? And when you make decisions based upon here, you end up with this always going wrong. There's almost never a good fear-based decision, because so much of the information that you could be making decisions on, not that there's never a good fear-based decision. There's always a better decision that is not made from a fearful place. That's probably the better way of saying that. There's always a better decision that's not made from the fearful place. So if we can get to a neutral emotional state here with being present and clear, that's going to mean that whatever action step that we take here is going to be from a better place, which means it's going to be a better decision. The only way that we can actually know the difference between these two is if we stop. We stop before we take action and we say, had I thought, how do I feel about it? Your feeling is your awareness. And when you look inside of your journal, how this journal will help you slow down is because you're going to have your thoughts about what is going to be important to me about my top goals for the week or my top 3 to-dos, right? You're going to decide what those action steps are going to be. And in deciding what those action steps are, you have to ask yourself, what am I thinking about and how am I feeling about it? Just know what is the action step I need to log here to be able to do or not do inside my top 3s, yeah? So this will actually come first. If you notice here, like as part of like our morning tracker, how your affirmations and visualizations are always a part of it, and how it's also reviewing your goals, right? Your goals that come here. These should help guide you. Like the reason that you take so much time to write out your goals here is because these goals help guide you with like what is emotionally in line for you to take action on. So when you can get clear on your goals, that tells you your thoughts and your feelings have aligned up to now tell you that these are the most important things for me to focus on. And then it should line up to come in my to-do steps here. So the theory is that if you can slow this part down, this thought and feeling part down enough that you actually have to go write out what the action steps are going to be that's important for you, that's hopefully better than just jumping straight from, I had a thought, I had a feeling, and then I just decided to take action. And that's how you can move through and say, hey, great, where am I taking that decision from? Cool. Let's go ahead and turn, guys, to some of like the instruction that we have here for today. So if everybody can open up their journals there to page 7, we're going to go ahead and start walking through our financial freedom one sheet that we have here. And I'll go ahead and start walking you guys through how this piece works. So if everybody can go ahead and pull that out, we'll go ahead and start to walk through that a bit. Okay. And then as we're pulling that out, guys, I just want to talk to you a little bit about how some of these pieces work. So this financial freedom one sheet, you guys will notice here at the very top here, how it has the financial freedom percenter number. That's how close you are as to being fully financially free from this worksheet. Well, let's talk a little bit about how some of these ideas chain together a bit from the other work we've been doing in the journal, right? So what we have here at like the very end, or very bottom end of the rainbow here, as this is financial freedom, right? We have our financial freedom for what it is that we really want, right? This could be financial freedom. It could be like intellectual freedom, whatever it is that it's on your fishes for to say, what is the big thing that I'm really after? For most of us, first, it's financial freedom, which is why we say it's called putting your oxygen mask on before doing anything else. It's because once you're financially free, you can go build everything else in your life without a lot less worry, right? Because there's not the opportunity for your foundations of your life to just drop out from underneath you. So what has to happen first, right? So the number one thing that we have to decide is like, what is it that I want? Because when I can decide what is it that I want, this is how I can determine, like, here's all my fishes of like, what is the parts of my life that I feel like is going to be most important for me. So here we'll just take finances as like one of the key pieces that we wanted out of our fishes. So then we're going to say, well, what is that I want? I want I'm decide here that I wanted financial freedom. That tells me here's my goal. Great. What am I going to do next? I'm going to first, I need to know, okay, where is my baselines? Baselines of my finances. So this is going to be currently, it's like, where am I at now? Where am I at now, and understanding what needs to happen for me to get here. I might not know all of these steps that I actually have to do yet, 3, 4, 5, etc. But I know that there's something that has to happen for me to get from financial freedom of saying what I want here to here. And this is where you start grabbing baselines, right? this is where we would start saying, like, inside of like a business term, this is where you start developing and say, what are my metrics? What are my metrics for success? When we talked about Sean's issue, our metrics for success were really easy, right? It was either something was either done or not done, right? We said, great, we're going to reward action as our metric of success when it comes into like task items for things that we need to do like on a daily or weekly basis. It's either binary, it's either done or not done. But here for the baselines for like my financial freedom, right? Well, this is a bit more complicated because it's not like I can have any act that's either individually done or not done. So what we have to do then decide is like, well, how do we understand how the system of money drives us from where we're at now to financial freedom? And how can we understand that to influence that system to drive us more towards we want, right? So we set our baselines for it. This is our metrics for success. And then this is where we start setting our goals. There's our quarterly, monthly, daily goals. And then we do a monthly review. So the idea is if I can establish my metrics for success that tells me how do I influence the system, my financial system to drive me towards financial freedom, and I can get clarity on that. So then what I can do is I can establish my to-do items for my quarterly, monthly, and daily goals, because these are the things that I'm going to do that are going to influence my metrics that I decided here. I believe that I could influence them by doing this. And my monthly review is to correct course. Because I am not perfect and nobody I'm working with is perfect. So what that means is I get awareness from setting my baselines. I then find out what are the things that I need to do for my quarterly, monthly, and daily goals. And then each month I'm going to review the influence that I've had on the system and with the actions I did to decide, was what I did here effective or not effective? And if it's not effective, that tells me that I need to realign my quarterly, monthly, or daily goals to try something new that's going to help influence the system. Okay, so number one here is going to be setting our baselines. And that's what we turn to for point number 7. Okay. So we look at page number 7 here. This is what this financial freedom one sheet is all about, right? So we say, great. So we're going to go ahead and start with my passive income. Let's say my passive income here, for example, is $10,000. My active income, I'm going to go ahead and say it's $150,000. Means my total income is $160,000. Yeah, but I spent $140,000 of it. Right? Well, actually, let's go ahead and change this up. Let's say that I spent 100 and I got taxed at 20%. So that means that I'm at a 32,000 in taxes. So after I subtract my expenses and taxes, that leaves me with how much money left over? 28,000. Oh, that's total taxes and expenses. Sorry. So this is 132,000. So that means my total money left over that I have left to invest is 28,000. And I invested 4,000. All right. So what this tells me is that if I have $10,000 in passive income and I have my active income at 150, that means my total income was $160,000. So after I subtract out my expenses of 100K and my taxes of 32, that means my total tax expenses were 132,000. I'm left with a 28,000 because I can take my total income of 160,000, subtract out 132,000, and that gives me my total amount that I'm left over at the end of the day to invest. And here that I invested it for, and out of the 28,000 I had to invest, I only actually invested 4,000. So what does this mean? Well, the first thing this means is my financial freedom percentage number is I have passive income of 10,000 and my expenses were at 100. So that means that I'm at 10% on my path to financial freedom, because my passive income is 10% of my total expenses. And I need to get my passive income up to $100,000 a year to equal my expenses. And that's when this number will then be 100%. Everybody following me on the math so far? Okay. So here we'll leave this blank for now. So here what we would say is we would say, well, where are there opportunities for me? Remember, our thing was we have our baselines. Now we need to find out what are the action steps I could take, and then later on at the end of the month review them, right? So first of all, what does this sheet tell me where I might be able to have improvements into my financial system from what you guys have right now? Who sees places from looking at these financial numbers right now of where I might focus my attention to help accelerate my path to financial freedom? So Connie says decrease expenses and taxes and increase my investments. Who else has any ideas? All right, Connie, nail all of it. Increase your passive income. Yeah. So I think that's even more precise than because the Connie's saying like you could start a business, right? So let's talk about like where those would be. Like if I wanted to start a business, I can start a business here. That's going to be increasing my active income. Yeah. Because active income is like the money you make from your activity, trading time for money. So Connie's like, what's up?
It could be that you create a business that then can carry on somewhat passively, such as ebooks, videos, etc. So it would require active involvement at first, but then that would decrease over time. Just an idea.
For sure. Yeah. So everybody will have to decide about what bucket they want to put it into.
Yep.
What I want to caution everybody about is what we typically find is people will start up new businesses as new active businesses. And what they wanted here was not just financial freedom. What they also wanted was this unspoken secret thing, which was time freedom. And so what we had to be careful of is how skillful are we really about being able to start up these active businesses and truly converting them into passive companies. That's hard. It's actually really hard to do. I've struggled with it immensely inside Royal Legal Solutions. And I have some of the best team with like Gina and Pete and Andy and all these guys that are just absolute machines about how to do that. Something I was talking with Chris about the other day too, is like, that's one of the hardest things is actually get turn active into passive. And what does that look like? And I also want to also caution everybody is that when we look at active businesses too, active businesses can fold really fast, right? Whereas like passive income through like asset-based passive income doesn't fold. That's what we want to look for. So we're looking for like this kind of durable financial and time freedom, which typically always means that it needs to come from some type of asset allocation play, right, into passive income. And then at least that's the way I think about it. Everybody's going to have their own way of thinking about it, but I don't judge my active income as safe at all. I always kind of think that like at any moment, my active income could fall off a cliff because who knows how business markets change, right? So if I really want to be safe, I need passive asset-based income. Other thing too, we like noticed here too, Connie pointed out too, is like, hey, you have $100,000 a year in expenses. Do you really need your expenses to be that high? Could you live a smaller lifestyle? And if you lived a smaller lifestyle, that would give you more money left over to invest. We also had $32,000 in taxes here, which tells us, hey, this is somebody that probably should meet with Pete, right? That they're at a 20% tax bracket. A 20% tax bracket here probably means that there's some opportunities for them to save a boatload of money here on taxes, being in that 20%. As a real estate investor and business owner, you should be far below 20% on your tax bracket. And we saw another challenge that this one sheet showed us here, which is how much you had left to invest versus actually invested. This tells me whoever this hypothetical client is, right, that they have a big gap about being able to find deals. They can't find the right deals to put the money into, which is why they're just sitting on cash, right? So if this, like your one sheet looks like this, that you have a bunch left over to invest and you don't have much actually invested, then I'd say, I actually need help finding the right deals. I should reach out to Scott and the team there to be able to find out where should I be putting money into. Where's a safe place to be putting money right now, right? Cool. Any questions on this so far as you guys look at this for yourself? I'll tell you one thing too is as you look at this, most people don't look at their taxes. So you probably will need to dig out your tax returns to find out what your tax number is. And that I would highly recommend for everybody that they actually go through and then refactor, relook at all of their expenses and actually do the exercise of doing the expenses, because everybody who I've ever worked with on this exercise always underestimates how much their expenses are by a ton into it. And so when you relook at your expenses and start tracking your expenses quarter over quarter and month over month, that's how you really drive that down, because what you're doing is creating the awareness about the expenses that then has you taking like, hey, I need a different action step, because now it's front and center in my mind of what my actual expenses are. But until you do this exercise, you don't have the awareness, right? It's just going all along in the background, which is why this exercise relates to your finances. So our number one thing is our oxygen mask is so important, and to be able to get accurate numbers here. I'm listing in 0 numbers here because I'm using it as a representation, but for you, you want these numbers to be as exact as reasonably possible, right? I wouldn't spend months trying to figure out the difference between, $2 or $3, right? But, plus or minus 5% is what you're really looking for on any one of these numbers really is. You want to dial them that hard. Okay, cool. Any questions on this so far? All straightforward. Everybody feels like they can be successful in trying to complete that coming into next week. Okay, so I'm going to up the challenge for you a little bit, because this will actually have you guys looking at what did my income and expenses look like maybe for last year. Might be the place to look at this. It's just looking at what are my last year's numbers as they relate. Now, what you might want to look at as well, if you're looking for bonus points coming into next week, is that what if my passive income here I had, let's say I had $5 million in total net worth. What would you see? What would that tell you about me if you saw that I had $5 million in a total net worth, that I only had $10 million in passive income, or $10,000 in passive income? What does that tell you? Who's got some ideas of what that tells them? Yeah, Connie says idle assets. What do you mean by idle assets? Chris says low returns. Well, it might not be all returns. I could be killing it. Could be having amazing returns, right? I don't know how you could say I had low returns, man. I tripled up on my money. Best returns I ever had was the real estate investment I made. Look at all the appreciation I got. I got $5 million net worth.
Yeah, but where are you showing it in terms of, you mean in terms of net worth, but you're not showing any passive income or active income from it. So that's what I mean by low returns. Not you're increasing net worth, but it's not spitting off any passive or active income for you.
That's true. That's right. That's low returns, right? Because 5 million, what? Is this just paper returns? Right? Big problem that we're seeing right now, right, is people are sitting on real estate being like, I'm killing it. Look at how good my investing is. I have all of this net worth. I'm like, all right, show me how that actually is driving your passive income. Because otherwise, what good is this? This is fake. Net worth is a fake number in my book, because net worth is a paper that can go up or down. The only real number that really exists here is passive income. I get it. I know net worth, depending upon how you allocate it, other moves you can make, and maybe it's a top line driver that you use for finances after you get through your passive income that you need to get to. But for our purposes, anybody that's below 100% as their financial freedom number, I would say your net worth is a fake number. That your net worth doesn't matter. I don't care what it is. What I really care is how well is your net worth driving to your passive income? How well do you have that aligned? Because this really is a vanity metric until you're over 100%. And what you can know from that is like, what? Look at this. What is 10,000 to my net worth of 5 million? Who has that percentage for us? What is that? Who's got the math? So we've got 10,000. I'll divide that by 5 million here. What do we got? Like 0.002, right? 0.2%. So it's like less than 1%, right? So when you do this exercise, each of you do this exercise individually, what I would recommend for you is looking at this number. First, getting clear on here, how did last year perform for me? Then let's go ahead and look at my total net worth and look what was my passive to net as it's coming on here. What we're actually finding right now, and the people that are meeting with Pete right now are actually seeing this more and more clearly because Pete's diagramming out what's happening with their financials as we're taking people through this exercise to get through how their financial freedom number is being calculated. And we get here, everybody is killing it on their net worth right now because everybody's net worth is so high because the market's got so inflated with like how aggressively everything's driving up in the market. So everybody thinks right now they're doing super well. And I'm sitting here thinking, well, what is that going to mean when we have a correction? Right? Are we going to watch all of our net worth here evaporate? Maybe our cash flows stay exactly the same, but we're going to watch our net worth here evaporate. What if we re-looked at our net worth and said, well, maybe it's time to look at how can I take some of the profits that I make here off the table and push them into something else? Push them into something else that's going to be protected for me from the market correction. So I can actually take some of these gains that I've made and actually do something with it. And that there's a lot of different ways you could do that. You could take the money out, pay capital gains on it. You could roll it into some DST types of investments to be able to defer capital gains and invest in larger real estate deals. There's stuff that we're working on with the anti-inflation fund that we've spun up and that I've been using for my personal investments. There's all kinds of things that can happen here. But the point I'm not actually that interested in what anybody decides to do. What everybody decides to do is whatever they think is going to be best for them in their situation. What I'm talking about for the purposes of this call is, do we have awareness of what's happening in our life at this level? How clear are we of what's going on here? And how clear are we of what's going on right here? Because these are going to be the two major areas, especially with what we're seeing right now, where we have big opportunities to be able to further solidify wealth. Cool. Chris, any other thoughts you have on like that part of the discussion so far? I wanted to see when you're talking about like low returns, or when you see this kind of situation, like what would you counsel somebody coming in for you that says, hey, these are what their financial numbers are looking out to be? Would it be substantially similar to what I'm saying, or would you say something different?
Well, I'd want to see what their goals are. I mean, there are some people that are sitting on a whole bunch of cash right now. Some very professional investors that are doing that because they're waiting for something substantial to invest in. But I mean, if you're like this person and your goal here is to be financially free, I would question, well, first of all, I mean, this active income of 150K, are you an entrepreneur? Are you a W-2? You might, do you have kids? Are you, by yourself, married? What are your, I need to know a bigger picture of who this person is and what they're wanting. But when I see that much money and a 0.02% overall return, in this case, if you're a W-2 person, you might want to quit your job and become a full-time investor of your money. And I'm sure you're going to get better than that kind of return.
Yeah, you could have something here too, right? You can see this and say, hey, great. Well, you're just so far below where this portfolio should be performing, right?
Exactly. I mean, literally a 3% return would basically increase your passive income to overtake your active. And then your taxes would go down tremendously too. So, I mean, but I'm personally biased because that's what I do. I mean, I invest my money full time, and I quit my W-2 10 years ago. And the only regret I have is that I didn't do that earlier. So I would want to know more about this individual and why they have such a low return. And is it because they're sitting on cash and they have a specific goal in mind what to do? I mean, for me, I would take that money and I would just find some really great cash flowing rentals, depending on where they live, and possibly invest in rentals or an apartment building or commercial property or DSTs, like you're saying. I mean, you can very easily get some 5-6% returns on there that are pretty low risk, that are going to basically replace your active income. So I would really want to see how much time they're spending on their active job, and what it is. Excellent.
Yeah. So what Chris is just walking us through, guys, from that I'm sure we all heard, was that Well, actually, this tool, looking at like these just financial numbers, actually spawn like a bunch of different questions. Like, does it matter like how they're holding that net worth? What are going to be like the long-term objectives, right? What are these long-term objectives you might have? Are you sitting on that much cash? Are you sitting on much assets for a particular reason? You know, what is like the access that you have to certain deals that has you getting such a low percentage rate? So so the point of this is to say the awareness that we're generated from the tool as how other people, including yourself, can then ask you better questions, how you and other people that you work with can then ask you better questions about these numbers to help you think through them in more detail about how are they going to drive through, right? That's the purpose. The purpose here is to create awareness to drive better questions that are more detailed and specific. Because before, without this tool, remember, our thing was here. The best we could do is, I know I want financial freedom. My baseline is I don't have financial freedom. I'm going to do a bunch of investing. Don't know how much I need to do, but I'm really going to try hard to close some deals. Don't know how many I need to close or for what amounts. And then hopefully I get to financial freedom. Whereas when using into a tool like this, look how much more detailed and specific our action steps were from Chris, right? Well, actually, let's find out like what the investment strategy would be. Is it holding cash or is it holding assets? And then how could they reposition the time they use from their active income to reallocate to their passive income? So it turned into a much more detailed action step, much more thought through, much more thorough about how are we going to drive these numbers to get to this specific portfolio performance that we're looking for, or this financial freedom number being influenced, this passive income number. Is that clear for everyone, or do we get lost in the numbers and in the worksheet? Charlie, how are you feeling about like this type of conversation using like these types of numbers? Is this all feeling pretty clear for you, Charlie?
Actually, yeah, it's very clear, and experiences that I've had personally with all my companies. You know, I'm readjusting everything to meet the shift from my net worth into more passive income role. So I'm going through that whole transition, have been going through that whole transition over several years now. And it does have, it's making a much more palatable difference from a cash flow standpoint, because I was heavy net worth and I wasn't really reaching the goals that I wanted to. So I sat back and reflected it. So I went the long pathway, Scott. I think what this does on page 7 is it really lines you up for a much quicker direct move combined with what we're doing with the SMART goals and fishes. Yeah. So I think it's really effective and actually going through it myself, you know, as well. But I took the long road, and now I'm looking at this going, geez, I could have saved so much time, you know, but this is good stuff.
Hey, well, I'll tell you, man, life is a long journey. You know, it's never too late to be on the right path for what's going to help you set you up for success here in the future, buddy. So that's awesome to hear.
Exactly.
Scott, if I can make a quick comment here
Yeah.
too, see if I can get myself on video here. Sorry, I'm switching my room around here quite a bit. But I do this all the time. I love how simple your spreadsheet is, but I do this constantly and have for the last 20 years. And I've got graphs that show, you know, the increases and where it's decreased. And you could look at certain years and see what's happened in the market. And I find so much value in this, so much value. It's not always the most fun thing to do. I mean, I kind of like doing this stuff, but I appreciate that a lot of people don't. And if you don't, sometimes you can find financial advisors that can help you out with this, but just simply knowing where your expenses are, what your net worth is, and making tweaks and constantly reminding yourself, I just find so valuable. So
How often, Chris, are you reviewing your financial KPIs and like into that? Because you're like, hey, I really love this system. I think for a lot of people, they're like, I don't love crunching through spreadsheets. So that's like a different level of nerding for all of us. You know, that we're,
yeah,
I know guys like me and you, like we dig it because we get off on the clarity, right? Of like what that
Right.
gives, right? into it. And we've spent so much time and energy for years wasted on not having clarity that like, we're like, no, it's so much less painful to just get the clarity up front than to go with that. But you struck me a piece in there too, is like, hey, you review it. And so that's what I was wondering about. I typically went through in this, I typically say, hey, I want to review those numbers for me, like on a monthly basis, to kind of just have a continual check-in, and to just stay on top of them. Are you more or less frequent than that for yours?
I, honestly do it anytime I'm just curious or I see a change in the market, but I would say religiously at least once a quarter. I do it, and I always make sure to do it the last day of the month or somewhere around that time, so that my graphs are very specific, for that I at least have that one exact data point. I also have some programs that make it very easy for me to just quickly glance at it and see it. For most people, something even like as simple as mint.com can just give you a good idea of where a lot of your assets are. I know for real estate that can be not very productive, but at least in terms of your expenses, a tracker like that, I find somewhat helpful.
Excellent. Yeah. So Chris is recommending for us to use something like Mint as well too, as like another tool. I'll let you guys know too, a secret is that I personally review mine on a monthly basis, but I built it into the planner here that our next review is on a quarterly basis, just like Chris currently does. So if you turn to page 54 and 55 of your planner, you're actually going to see that coming up here at the end of the month, you'll have your next review to actually be able to fill in your financial freedom one sheet looking back. So those are going to be inside of your planner and coming up for you there on the quarterly basis. So you don't have to remember. If you just follow the planner will lead you everywhere you need to go. It has all the prompts in it. You just follow it from the left, open it up, and then you just follow it straight through, for what everybody needs. So just know that that's coming up for everybody as well as part of what we'll be doing. Great. Any questions, comments, concerns, guys, about doing this type of activity, or the relative value of it, how it relates to anything else that we do?
Scott, can I make a comment?
Sure.
I learned this years ago from contracting. I always lived by this. I learned a lesson probably almost 30 years ago now. If it's not how much money you get to, how much money you make, but how much you get to keep at the end of the day. And it goes directly in line with what you're covering today. On if you don't first know where you're at, what difference does it make where you're going? Because you really just don't know where you're at. And so the financials aspect of it, I learned a long time ago from contracting. I saw millions of dollars being thrown away in the process of all the work that we were doing. And how important it was, to pay attention to the numbers. So I know a lot of times people look at it like, like Scott, like Chris was saying, right? It's like, is it a necessary evil? In many ways it is, because you just need to know where you're at in order to shift from where you're at. So that's how I ended up getting to where I am today, on shifting from my having that net worth amount shifted over more into my passive income amount. Because actively I was earning a lot and my businesses were earning a lot. But as time shifted on and you get older, you begin to look at, well, how can I shift my funds from where I have? And I built up all these assets. Now, and we have that old saying of you can be land rich and money poor. You can be asset rich and money poor, just because you're not watching what's happening with that conversion process. So this is a really good exercise, that you folks have put together through the process. And it does make sense to look at it, because it has saved a tremendous amount of income for me over the last 30 years and built up, more cash flow. So anyway, just a little comment on the side for that.
Awesome, Charlie. So having like clear targets to you, like on hard numbers, what became important for you, it shifted some of your behavior, just having like awareness of what those critical numbers are. Yep. I'll say that's actually happens 100% of the time. It actually never doesn't work into doing that. So go ahead, Chris.
Yeah. I mean, it just really struck a chord with me. What Charlie just said is it really is about what you keep at the end. I mean, I live in a neighborhood where there are some people who live have incredible income. They live in an apartment and drive a Lamborghini. I mean, it just shows that their financial literacy is just in the toilet. And if I had to put it in a nutshell for myself, a lot of it is delayed gratification. I mean, when I was younger, I was saving quite a bit. And even as my income would go up, so would my savings rate. And look, I live in Orange County, California. There's a lot of superficial people around here. I try not to surround myself with those kind of people. We have a term called, the hedonistic treadmill. The more money you make, the more you spend. The bigger house, the bigger boat, the bigger this, the bigger that. And you're going to have people who make fun of you. I mean, as your network goes up, like, why aren't you spending your money here? Why aren't you doing that? You got to fight it. And you got to fight yourself and just realize that retirement and financial freedom is the goal here. Now, you got to still enjoy life. You got to have vacations. You got to pay for experiences, but things, I just, I don't feel like people increase their happiness with things. Work on the experiences, work on yourself, increase your financial freedom, and your happiness will go through the roof when you no longer are dependent on a W-2 income.
Yeah, it's just amazing what happens after that. I think one of the it's actually so critical to what you're saying here, Chris, and to like how powerful it's been. It's been my experience. Sounds like it's been Charlie's experience. It's been the experience of all of the most successful investors that have achieved faster than average results into achieving financial freedom. Think the way that you guys are talking about it into it, from what I can see as a predictable time over time basis. It's actually so important to us is that one of the things that we're actually doing is looking to create like a combined offering inside of what we do inside of Royal Tax with Pete that combines our tax strategy with these financial freedom calculators of determining how does our net worth go to that, along with a review of our investments to say, hey, how well are our investments performing, and for us to integrate that into like one system, right, and guide everybody through it. Charge a little bit of money to be able to walk through all of that, of course, because it's CPA work, MBA work, fractional CFO work, et cetera. But our goal is to be able to get that to a really affordable place to say, great, well, those are the baselines, and that we want every single client, every single person inside of Royal Legal Solutions to go through that at least one time with us, that we can teach on it here, but getting the foundation set for everybody as the baselines, we know will drive so much more success and being supportive for the community. So we're going to be dialing in exactly how that offer is going to roll out and what that look like. But if everybody keeps in touch with like their email and inside the things that we're going to be talking about in Royal Tax, we'll have some updates about when that type of comprehensive look will be available. And I can tell you it'll probably cost a lot less than you think for us to go through that, to go that with you guys. So Gina, anything else that you wanted to key off on here before we wrap up for the day?
No, I just want to encourage everybody. That was very insightful. Thank you, both Scott and Chris and Charlie and Julie, everybody that contributed today. I think this week our work is to do the one sheet. For many of us, including myself, it may feel a little scary because you don't want to see what the numbers are going to look like. But if you don't start now, procrastination is not going to make it any better. It's not going to magically just change itself if we don't start somewhere. So that's our work for the week. And we look forward to next week. If, when we come back in, if there's somebody that would like to go through that together with Scott and share with the team, that would be great. We know what kind of value we get when we walk through stuff with Scott, even if we don't like the numbers.
Yeah. Excellent, guys. Well, looking forward to next week, everybody. And next week, of course, we're going to look to review those financial freedom one sheet numbers and come into that with any questions and reviewing numbers to the extent that's appropriate, right? There's obviously some privacy and other concerns that we have, right, with actually sharing out like, hey, these are what my numbers would be. But if somebody has like those places that say, hey, these are some good representations of numbers that would give us the questions that we would want asked, right? Or the questions we want answered, and coming with those scenarios, then we can continue to talk through what is the story that the numbers tell us about what's going on and what do we need to do, right? Because that's what we're trying to get to, is what is the story that these numbers are trying to tell us about where we're at, where do we need to go, and what do we need to focus on. So that's what we're looking for. We're going to take numbers And then we're gonna have story time. It's gonna be a great week. You guys are gonna enjoy it. Into it. We're also going to be talking through a little bit coming in next week about how to look at our month end reflections that we do, and what is the importance of the month end reflections, and why do we spend the time to look over how the last month went when setting what's going on next month. It's actually perfect timing because we're going to be dang close to the end of the month, coming into it. So it'll be great to have that training before we actually do it there in the group. So please come next week with some scenarios for us to talk through. We'll be asking for everybody to share a scenario or to come ready to share a scenario in case you get called on what that would look like. Okay. All right, guys, well, have a fantastic week. I'll see you next week, everyone. Go out there, get after it, make it happen.